The Samsung Galaxy Z Flip6 has been unlike any smartphone I've ever used, and it majorly boils down to form factor. Its design is compact, and for it to fold into my palm never really gets old. I like that the folding mechanism doesn't mean poor build quality, like Corning Gorilla Glass Victus 2 on the front and back of the device, alongside IP48 water resistance. But I still feel the hinge accumulates quite a bit of dust over time, so whenever using the Z Flip 6, I'm always a bit more careful than when I'm using a typical regular smartphone. Speaking of the hinge, let's talk a bit about its quality. The way it behaves, I've got no complaints really, and with the smartphone being new, I did find the hinge to be slightly tighter, although with usage, it does become looser. It's not alarming, but enough to know that there is a difference for sure between when you first open the Galaxy Z Flip 6 and when you open it quite a number of times after a week or two of usage. I'm not too sure how this would translate into longer term usage, but from what I feel, it might get looser and eventually a bit more flimsy. Okay, so what about usage? Well, I'd say it's a learning curve. On the outside, you're looking at a pretty small display, and aside from a few limited widgets and options that you get, there's not much that you can do here out of the box. But that's where Samsung's Good Lock comes into the picture, which is a helpful add-on that makes your outer display way more usable on the Z Flip 6. You install it from the Galaxy Store, and this helps you essentially get any application to work on the outer display, and for the most part, it's pretty cool. But not being able to fully multitask on the outer display is a bit of a letdown, where other competing smartphones like the Xiaomi Mix Flip, for example, do offer you that functionality. And although it's great to be able to watch a YouTube video on the outer display, it quickly becomes limiting, just like the other things that you would do on the outer display. For example, if you pull your smartphone out to quickly use, the keyboard is quite small, and let's say you've got to scan a barcode for a ticket or a menu card. When the Z Flip 6 is closed, you just can't do it unless you open up the smartphone, and when you have to open up the smartphone, it's always a two-handed job. Sometimes I wish there was some sort of a mechanism to quickly open up and close the Z Flip 6, or I think things would be a bit more convenient if there was just a smaller additional camera on the back which would solve these problems. But for now, the most productive I'd say you can be with the Z Flip 6 is when you open it. The way the aspect ratio is makes it just a bit longer than your typical smartphone, and while this isn't noticeable day to day, it is noticeable when you're watching a YouTube video, for example, when the black bars on the side give it away. I also think the inner display has a bezel that's a bit bigger than your traditional flagship smartphone, so you don't get that immersive visual experience that you would on, say, a Galaxy S24, for example, but that's kind of the sacrifice you make for this kind of a form factor. But in terms of quality, there's nothing much to complain about, which is how it should be for a flagship smartphone, and usability when it comes to outdoors has been great too. Likewise, performance isn't much of a problem on the Z Flip 6. You'd very easily be able to multitask, and Samsung's software skin makes everything a breeze. Plus, the way Android is structured on One UI actually has me convinced that this is one of the best skins on a smartphone, period. It's got useful AI tricks up its sleeve as well, with circle to search obviously carrying over, but also things like sketch to image, for example, where you can turn pretty much any drawing into an image however you like, and also cycle through a lot of different variations of the same. But the one thing that I'm missing on this is the fact that the inner display doesn't support an S Pen like on the Fold 6. I think with S Pen support, it would pair nicely with the Flip 6 and also double as a vlogging companion for you to be able to control the shutter of the camera on the smartphone, and this could really pair well with both the AI experiences and also for the other things that the smartphone is useful for, like when you're using the camera when it is propped up. And to be honest, being able to prop it up does encourage you to take photos and videos. The front camera is pretty good on this thing, both indoors and outdoors, and even in some challenging light. But if you want things to be even clearer, you can use the primary camera for your selfies, which is something that I kind of did very often. The duo of primary cameras is pretty capable, borrowed straight from the Galaxy S24, so whether you're taking photos during the day or night, there's really no complaint I have with the optics. The one aspect of the smartphone where it is a miss is the fact that there's no dedicated telephoto lens, so in case you're into portraits or zoom images, you might be a bit disappointed. Even for video, I'd say the experience is pretty good, and on the overall, the camera is much more like a flagship smartphone this year, which is a welcome change compared to the previous years on the Flip series. What I feel needs a lot of work on the Z Flip 6 and the Z Flip series is battery. There's only a 4000 mAh cell inside and it falls quite a bit short. You're looking at around 4 hours of screen on time on average, plus or minus 1 depending on how much you're pushing the Z Flip 6. For a flagship, I feel like this kind of backup is on the lower end of the spectrum, so this is really something that Samsung needs to work on for the next version of the device, especially when other foldables are able to pack a much larger battery for almost the same form factor. So to wrap things up, I don't think the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 6 is for me. Not because it has a lot to do with Samsung, in fact, the only places I'd nitpick are battery and the slightly underwhelming outer display. The latter makes usability when closed not so great, but I think the form factor in general isn't something that I really have adapted to. To truly use a smartphone, I need a bigger display, and having a form factor like this just means the extra step of opening it up to use it, which I think I'd rather just avoid. So that's about it for my thoughts on the Galaxy Z Flip 6. Do let me know what you think down in the comments, and make sure to like and subscribe. This was Vaibhav, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.